My name is Greg Fox. I'm here in Austin, Texas at Sensory Overload Presents Volumes. This will be the third time I've done a Volumes event. The first one I did with Ezra, who created it, Ezra Masch. I did this at the Ringling Museum in Sarasota, Florida. And when we did that, it was just an acoustic drum set activating lights in a room. It was very direct. This is different because we're using sensory. So it's not just a percussive thing. There's all this tonality going on too. It opens up all the possibilities that sensory percussion brings to a situation, but with this kind of like animation through the lights and the colors and the way that that's kind of working in this kind of three-dimensional way inside the space. For this event, there are mesh heads on this kit, but I don't usually use mesh heads at all. I usually just use a regular acoustic kit. Usually it's just snare, high tom, floor tom, kick drum, a couple cymbals, and I've got, all of those drums kind of handling different duties depending on what that sound environment is and where it makes sense to have certain things live in that space as far as how the drums connect to controlling things in the computer with sensory. I got introduced to sensory percussion very early on when it was in probably like what you would call beta, way back before the first version was released. Talak Ayel Esparza is a good friend of mine, fellow musician, and he one day hit me up and said, I'm working on this thing, I think you'd like it, can I bring it over to your studio and check it out? And he brought over a very early version of it, and it immediately sort of like opened a door of possibility that I'd been kind of looking for a long time. Sensory percussion is just a way to turn a drum set into a very capable MIDI controller. Using the software that it comes with, you can kind of do anything you want with regards to controlling all the different qualities of sound and sound production just by playing the drums. I personally have, I think, a kind of a peculiar way of composing music, and it tends to go from like a center-out direction. It's almost like developing like a landscape and then animating parts of that landscape. And so with sensory percussion, I was able to do that in a way that's intuitive to me using electronics, like hardware or the computer, but while using my primary instrument, the drums. So it really brought together my two worlds of sound making and music making into something I can do in a single gesture. Even way more so than using like drum pads or things like SPDSs or things like that, where it always feels like I have to activate something electronic, I'd have to hit something that wasn't the drums. So now every gesture I make can be interacting with this sort of invisible world, and it unifies the different approaches that I have to making music. There's so many different ways that people use this technology when they get their hands on it, and it's always about it being, I think, ideally, with any music technology, an extension of your body, right? So you get familiar with it and you learn it just in the same way that the drumstick becomes an extension of the body. It needs to like be another link in that chain. And so you get over the kind of hump, so to speak, of, getting familiar with it, just like you would with getting familiar with technique or something. Like, it's not like writing a song. It's a very different process for me personally. When I'm working in sensory percussion, I use a lot of randomized elements. The randomization is always happening sort of within parameters that keep things in harmony, but a lot of it is so that I can kind of hear what's happening and respond to it while it's happening. The way I describe it often when I'm doing this kind of stuff is that we see the drum set, but then I'm kind of animating or showing or demonstrating that there's also this kind of invisible sound world there that it's environmental. There's like depth and space to it, and I'm kind of showing it by activating it on the drum set and then bringing it to space. So the way that there's all this, the light and color and the way that everything is kind of animated because of the volumes installation, that further kind of demonstrates that. So I'm speaking kind of through the lighting and the color and the animation as well as I am through the sound. As far as what sensory percussion does for drums becoming sort of maybe like more of a solo instrument, you could have guitars and bass and a keyboard and a horn section in there and have all that be present if that's the kind of thing you want to do. It just expands the possibilities of the types of sounds you can make while playing the drum set. So if your ambition is to be doing a solo thing on the drums, then yes, this is, I think, the best way to do that. I've never liked using electronic drums. I've never liked drum pads or things like that. I think that this is just easily the best way to do it. There's always going to be some degree of discomfort when you're doing something new or when you're trying something different or when you're like expanding. My advice would be to try it and to just get your hands on it and see what kind of activates for you as far as what feels exciting. Especially drummers who have an interest in music production or in electronic music or in being more of a source of sound than just a backbeat or just like fulfilling that kind of role in the context of a band or something like that. This is a really great way to do it. You don't have to leave the drum set to keep doing what you're doing. You can do everything from the kit. And the more familiar you get with using the software and with kind of writing for it, it starts to have its own logic.